7 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Why don't we do a show? It's Mission Log Live. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. Yes, this is Mission Log Live, when your Star Trek pals get together and talk Trek and other stuff. And we do it all with you, provided you call in. There are a few ways to do that. You can click on the link in your Zoom meeting, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone. You can also call us, as did your father and his father before him, and do us a favor, please tell them to knock it off. 669-900-6833 is the phone number, 669-900-6833. Then you enter the meeting code that you'll find in the show description and the comments, and then you are on, not the air, but the internet. Joining us this week, one of the coolest nerds we know, comedian, writer, producer Dana Gould is here. He is a TOS Trekkie. We'll talk to him about all kinds of stuff, from Star Trek to Planet of the Apes to his series, Stand Against Evil, which just wrapped production on season 3. Really excited to have him here, so please get your questions in now. Join our Zoom meeting. Use the one tap from your smartphone or call 669-900-6833.
Hey, here's what I like to do about this time. I'd like to say hello to the people who are watching live and chiming in. There's John McQuillan, there's Carlos, there's Heidi, Lisa, Dave Takechi, Holly, a lot of new people, a lot of returning listeners. Hey, there's Chuck. We just talked to Chuck last night. Big things coming up there. And shout out to Keith Parker, who says the Vulcan has no pants. John, thanks for the shout out a couple of weeks ago. The reason I mentioned the Vulcan statue in your hometown is because I myself, a graduate of Birmingham Southern College, where in the finest liberal arts tradition, my friends and I actually discussed Star Trek in philosophy class. So that is awesome. Thank you, Keith. And thank you to everybody who is saying hello. And I hope that you all chime in as we get the show going. So thanks to everybody who is watching live on Facebook or YouTube. And thank you to the people who are watching the video later as well. And finally, thanks to the people who are listening to the audio-only version of the show. You can search for Mission Log Live wherever you get your podcasts, or make it even easier. Go to podcast.roddenberry.com, where you will find links to all of our shows. There's Mission Log, there's Mission Log Live, there's the Trek Files, Women at Warp, and Priority One. And one last little request. Wherever and whenever you're watching or hearing this show, head to the source, hit like, hit share, write a review, or heck, give us 5 stars. Share the love is what I'm saying, because in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Just made that up, Ken.
I know. Yeah, it's very similar to the one from last week, but exactly like the one from last week.
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of last week, we did business last week. We're going to do it again now. We got something coming up this weekend. Holy cow, it's this weekend. So San Diego Comic-Con is this weekend, and John Champion and I are going to be there. John's been there before. I never have. And I always said, if I ever get to go to Comic-Con, I kind of want to go in some sort of capacity where, basically I'm not standing in line. I want to be there for like a panel or something like that. And lo and behold, there are 2 panels that John and I are going to be part of. The Roddenberry panel at the Convention Center, room 24 ABC, is on Thursday, the 19th. That is day after tomorrow, which is kind of freaking me out all of a sudden. That's going to be at 1:30 p.m. So again, Convention Center, room 24 ABC, Thursday the 19th at 1:30. John and I are going to be on the panel for just a couple of minutes, really, talking about the Roddenberry Podcast Network and some other stuff that's going on. And then of course, they're doing a bunch of other stuff, letting you know all the other things happening with Roddenberry Entertainment. So that is Thursday. Then Friday, we're going to be part of Larry Nemechek's panel, Star Trek, A Fandom Divided. This is at the Neil Morgan Auditorium at the San Diego Central Library, 5 p.m. It is a short 10-minute walk from the Convention Center. And if San Diego is anything like San Diego, 10-minute walk in San Diego is it's awesome. There are people in other parts of the country who wish they could have a 10-minute walk that nice. So seriously, come on down.
A 10-minute walk in San Diego is like 45 minutes. So it's great. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I'm not sure that's really a good thing, but okay.
Sure.
Right. I don't know. And then the last thing, of course, I want to remind you about is all the stuff we're doing with Sansar. We'll probably talk. Do you want to go ahead and talk about that now, John? Are we naming names, or are we just still teasing?
I think we're still teasing.
Okay. Well, then there's a thing coming up. and it's going to be really exciting. We're talking about it at Comic-Con. We're talking more about it at STLV. Sansar is the name of the virtual reality platform, and we've done trivia night there. We've done a meet and greet there, and there's something much bigger coming there from Roddenberry. So, lock it in and rip the knob off, as they used to say when people listen to radio.
Yeah. And, oh, by the way, before we move on to the poll, really quickly here, George says, "You rock, Ken and John." And then Paul Wright says, "Hi, Ken and Ray." Paul, you're fired. So,
checks in the mail, Paul. Checks in the mail.
Let's talk about the poll. So every week, most every week, sometimes when we feel like it, we post a poll question. Last week, when our guest was Dr. Kyle Johnson, we asked you, who's your philosopher, Kirk or Picard? Wisely, 17% of you said Kirk, 83% of you said Picard. I think that makes perfect sense. This week, in honor of our special guest, we have a question about comedy. Who's funnier, Data or Worf? Now, right now, Data is at 48%, Worf is at 52%. Ken, feelings about that, about how that breakdown is, about who you think is funnier?
Well, I mean, do we want to say? I'll tell you honestly, to me, Worf's funnier because he wasn't trying. I mean, Data was always, generally speaking, when Data was being funny, he was trying to be funny, and it, tended to fall a little bit flat. Whereas Worf, they gave him some really good lines towards season 6. And then they, gave him a girlfriend in season 7, and it wasn't nearly as funny.
And then they took it all away. Yeah.
Yeah. So please do chime in on the poll. That'll be up. Golly, that'll be up until next week's show. So you got plenty of time to say who's funnier, Data or Worf. What can we say about tonight's guest? He started stand-up at the tender age of 17. Since then, it's been movies and stand-up and TV and stand-up. His albums include Funhouse, I Know It's Wrong, and Mr. Funny Man. He's written and produced for The Simpsons, or The Simpsons, if you like that show. His latest big venture is Stand Against Evil, which just wrapped shooting season 3. A great entertainer, a great humanitarian, and my dearest friend for 78 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dana Gould.
Hello, John. Hello, Ken. Hello, everybody.
Hey, pleasure to have you. Look, I'm a little worried about the conversation tonight because I look at the clock and we only have 53 minutes left. And
that's 2 digressions.
Yeah, exactly. We've 3 of us have done this before where we got together to talk, and it turned into sort of an epic, just a marathon of pop culture references. But most importantly, it started out with Star Trek. That was the common bond. But let's just look at the other things that we all geek out on. There's Trek, there's Planet of the Apes, there's Ed Wood. Oh, we can seriously talk some Ed Wood if we wanted to. Vincent Price, classic horror, all these things that you're into and
yes.
that I'm into and that Ken's into. They're all kind of bookended, 1950s to late 70s, maybe. Are you fixated on a certain era or a certain style, or what is it? Yeah. Is it an Arrested Development?
Yes to all those. I think to what you said about the era and the style, I think it goes to what was your favorite cast of Saturday Night Live? Who was your favorite James Bond? It's whoever was the one that was prevalent when you were 14. And I grew up in the 70s, and it was syndicated Star Trek. It was the Universal Classic horror movies on in syndication. It was, the original, Star Wars. It was all of those things. Famous Monsters magazine. All of those things were sort of frozen in amber, and it was covered from those periods like 30s, 40s horror, Hammer, Star Trek, Star Wars, all of those things. Ed Wood, I don't think I got into Ed Wood until you're in college, when you realize when you get to put some irony on the cake, when you get to frost it with irony, like, this is horrible and fantastic.
Okay, but here's the thing. One of my favorite lines in the documentary about Plan 9, I remember the one that came on the DVD.
Yeah, Flying Saucers Over Hollywood.
Exactly. And the host of that asks John Waters. He's in that, of course, because John Waters is in it. And John Waters says something like, Plan 9 is not the worst movie ever made. There's no way it's the worst movie ever made. Sophie's Choice is the worst movie ever made. And here's the thing, though. There's something about Plan 9 and about Ed Wood's work and talking to you and other people who get it. I feel like, yeah, you can very simply look at it as so bad it's good, but there's something really great about the earnestness of those movies.
It's the earnestness, and it's also consistently entertaining and in different ways. We do a live reading of it every October. Me, Janet Varney, Bob Goldthwait, Paul F. Tompkins, all of my comedian friends who love it. And we do a live reading of Plan 9, Patton Oswalt, every October at Largo. And I wrote different stage directions for it. So and we tried to do it with other movies. No other movie is as consistently funny all the way through than Plan 9 is. And let's do another movie. And it is a diamond in the rough. And just when you think it's out of gas, Eros comes in. And there's a surprise at every turn. And it's just a beautiful, terrible cake, to continue my bakery analogy. It's just it's a crudité of ineptitude that never gets tiring. And it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
For what it is. I was my weird story about that I know you guys know is I ended up being very close friends with Mila Nurmi, who was in Plan 9. She was Vampira. And she said, she goes, I never looked better than in that movie.
Oh.
I guess the DP really knew his stuff, and she did. She looked great. Yeah. I love that movie. And that's one of those movies that I can put, I believe, it's like Wrath of Khan. If it's on, you can just sit on the end of the coffee table and watch the whole thing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Trek, because there are so many things that are. Okay, I'll get to a sentence eventually. It'll be fun when I do. So it almost sounds like you're saying, well, because it was on, TV 38, or because it was on one of, I'm assuming, the 5 channels that you would have had when you were growing up. That's one of the reasons that Star Trek survives for you. But there are plenty of other things that were on TV at the same time, and yet we know you because you're a Star Trek fan. You actually were kind enough to write in, and say that you were listening to Mission Log, which blew my mind for quite a while.
Hey, wait, can I very quickly just interrupt? And because I love to tell this story that I saw that message come into Facebook from Dana Gould, like, hey, really enjoy your show. And I ignored that because I assumed you had people. You probably still have people, and I assumed it was people who just didn't know what they were doing, had no idea who they were contacting. And then, Ken, you got in touch with me like 3 days later. Did you see that Dana Gould contacted us? And I was like, it had to have been people. It's got to be a clerical error somehow. And you were like, no. He wrote back, and then the rest is history. So
well, yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, well, that just makes me all embarrassed again. So there we go. All right, so okay.
It always has to be more successful than you think. But I'm always worried that anybody knows who I am.
That was no. Well, whatever. Well, yeah.
Well, as I've said,
and it'll be fine. And you've been
I've quoted
my years.
I know. Well, I've quoted my friend Andy Kindler a lot. Where in all the things that I've done, my target audience is men my age who are me. So I don't in the new series, in the new season of Stand Against Evil, I went really, really, really out of my way to have a Kolchak the Night Stalker shout out.
Nice.
No
one but the 3 of us cares about.
Oh, that is beautiful. That is so beautiful.
Yeah. And
all right,
you'll appreciate it when you see it. And I said to people, I said, look, not everybody's going to get this, but the people who get it are going to love us for it. That's all I said. But you were talking about how I did get into Star Trek. It's very strange, and I don't want to belabor the point. I grew up in a big Irish Catholic family. I have 4 older brothers. and a younger sister, and everybody in my family was very not like I was. I was the white sheep of the family. They're athletes and hunters and fishermen and big drinkers. They're big. It's Massachusetts, but you get outside of Boston, and it's a red state, and they're red staters. And I grew up in a house with a gun cabinet and deer heads on the wall, and that whole trip. And I was the only one in my family that really wasn't into that stuff at all. And this is also in the 70s. An example, like my father could not understand that I wasn't really into sports, I wasn't really into hunting, but was straight. And like he couldn't square that circle. And so it's nice to know that in some ways in my heterosexuality I'm a disappointment. But I was really into Creature Feature on Channel 56 and Star Trek. And my cousin Chris really was a big Trekkie, and he was like the only person, and he was a couple of years older than me, and he really liked it. So I thought, oh, it's okay then to like it. He's older and he likes it, so it's this cool sort of secret handshake for people. And it was on every night at 6:00 on Channel 56. And the other thing is when you I don't want to get airy-fairy about it, but when you grow up in a very chaotic environment, you really come to depend on things that are stable. And Star Trek was on every night at 6. I knew at 6:00 Star Trek was on, and it was, and so it played a big important role in my adolescence, just always having it there.
One of the things that we have conversations with people, on this show and then other times about sort of the philosophies behind Star Trek, messages, morals, meanings, that whole thing. Mm-hmm. What's always interesting to me is when we, ask people how important is that stuff to you, and they're like, they like the ships, they like the aliens, they like Kirk. Did that stuff sort of penetrate for you, or was it? When you talk about things like Plan 9, when you talk about things like Creature Feature and stuff like that, that's a lot of effects heavy stuff that really would have hit a teenage kid in the 70s. Is it?
No, it did, but in a very subliminal way. Like all of the things that I was into, going into my teenage years, Star Trek, Twilight Zone, a lot of those horror movies, a lot of those 50s horror movies. There was a bedrock mid-century liberal perspective, a mid-century, not a modern, but a very humanistic, open-minded, accepting, treating people with dignity and respect, and that was a given in a lot of those shows. So yeah, I grew up watching those things, and that was just the sort of the to use a 50-cent phrase, that was the lingua franca of all of that stuff. It wasn't about jerks,
mm-hmm.
And when Kirk was being a jerk, he was a misguided but well-meaning jerk. But and even like Dark Shadows, which I was a little too young to appreciate it, but my older brothers were really watched it. Barnabas was a sympathetic figure. He was forlorn. Like I never got into sort of jerky macho nonsense. There was always everybody was for the underdog, and I think that's why kids love. As a little kid, you like the Wolfman and the Creature from the Black Lagoon, because they're misunderstood just like you're misunderstood. And I think there's a big subliminal thing that runs through that. For a guy who grew up, in a family where everybody was different than I was. Everybody was bigger and very physical and athletic and always drunk and then to be a small kid with Starlog magazine, it's not a surprise that I got really into Planet of the Apes, that there's something about a guy trapped in a world that he knows is wrong, but nobody else understands it. It's not surprising that rang my bell in a strange way. It's also, as I said, Moses dressed like Tarzan chasing King Kong dressed like Fonzie.
Wow. You think that was the pitch? Actually, no, it wouldn't have been, because there was no Fonzie yet, was there?
That was the pitch. And I'm out.
No, but we still got, yeah. I want to remind people, if you want to get your questions in today, join our Zoom meeting. Hit the one tap from your smartphone or call the phone number 669-900-6833, 669-900-6833. There's one other question I want to ask you before we move on to something else. We've been getting caught on, like, this is the stuff that came in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I'm curious, is there science fiction today that you see, whether it's a TV series or movies today? Like, what do you see in sci-fi today that turns you on? Or are you the guy who says, give me the bright colors and the 48 minutes and I'm done?
I love the bright colors in the 48 minutes, but I love to stay relevant. I loved, the new Battlestar Galactica. I thought was phenomenal. I know that's probably coming up on 10 years, maybe. From
2004 that started.
Yeah, more so.
Yeah.
Man. I thought that was amazing. I loved. Had you not thrown it at me, I would have known it. Yeah, well, I love the new Planet of the Apes movies. I thought they were terrific and well made. I love The Incredibles. I thought that's a great. Fun. Yeah, no, I like a lot of. I don't know if there's what would be like a new science fiction thing. I'm trying to think of a new. Like
I'm not trying to.
The new Star Wars movies. I'm like, my feeling on them is, yep, there it is.
Right. Well, we'll take like a Westworld or something like that. That's really. Very thoughtful, very sci-fi heavy, high concept.
I'll tell you a funny story about Westworld, guys.
Go ahead.
My ex-wife, who's a wonderful person, was the head of HBO when they started developing Westworld, and I like to tell people this story, and it's her name is Sue Nagel, and when she first got the job at HBO, there was a pilot that they had made and they weren't sure about it. And I think they were going to pass on it. And she said, take a look at this because I think there's something to it. And I looked at it and I said, no, I like it. And she said, I think we should recast that role and this role. And I think we need to reshoot some stuff. But I think this is a good pilot. And I'm going to go to them and tell them that they should not make this other pilot they want to make, and they should use that money to fix this pilot. And I said, yeah, I like it. Go for it. And because my ex-wife made that her first big move, they decided to reshoot a show called Game of Thrones, and that's how that ended up on television.
All right, you saved TV.
No, I had nothing to do with it, but I was in the room when it was saved. My ex-wife saved it. And when she started to tell me about Westworld, I said, well, I think they made that show. It's called Battlestar Galactica. And then she went, well, I think they have a different way they're going to take it. But I was like, yeah, sentient robots. Yeah, they did that.
We have a question.
I know. The point of that whole story is it shows you what I know.
Well, we do have a question here from Zoom user Scott. He says, I'm wondering, with the reemergence of anthology shows like Stand Against Evil, Bobcat's new show, and the Jordan Peele thing coming to HBO, do you think we're going to see more down the pike, or do you think there's a chance for an anthology-type Trek show?
I think an anthology-type Trek show is a fantastic idea. I wish they would do anthology Star Wars movies. That would be great. Right. I'm glad you mentioned Bobcat Goldthwait's Misfits and Monsters, which is really terrific. Stand Against Evil is actually not an anthology. It's just a comedy, it's a sitcom hiding in a horror movie. But I know excuse me, sorry. The Jordan show on HBO and Bobcat show are wonderful. The door is open now it's hard to underestimate, or I won't. It's hard to underestimate how much Netflix has put a wrecking ball through the television landscape, and how because of that, agencies are now production arms, management companies are now production arms. The whole goal of show business has become owning content, and they are starved for content, and content providers are fortunately still in demand because of it. And because of the way people's viewing habits have changed, I think there's a better chance for anthologies to survive. I think Black Mirror proved that they could still work, and I love Bob's a lot. I try to like Black Mirror, but wow, sometimes
we actually we had a couple of people, and I wasn't trying to lead you towards this, but I was wondering if it was one that you might hit on. A couple of people mentioned the Orville in the chat room as well. Did you get a chance to check that out?
I've not seen the Orville, but I love Seth, so I hope it's.
Yeah, well, you're with John Champion then, because he hasn't watched the Orville either.
Yeah, we're gonna form a club. Yeah,
I know. Right? It'll be.
Do you like it?
I'm a huge fan. Yeah,
great,
I'm a
great,
yeah. It's
no, I love Seth. Seth's a great. I can. This is unlike a lot of people. I haven't seen the show, but I know the guy, and and he's terrific. And he is as big a Star Trek fan as they come.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would like to see a reboot of Quark.
Yeah, well, sign Richard Benjamin up, and and let's cast the twins. Yeah,
I can get you the twins.
You could? Okay, all right.
I can get you oddly, my girlfriend, which is a ridiculous thing for a grown man to say, but it's one of the punishments of getting divorced, is that you get a girlfriend, even though she's a woman. But woman friend sounds like somebody grandpa has to bring to dinner with him in case the machine breaks. So, but my girlfriend is an identical twin, and in season 3 of Stand Against Evil, she and her sister play the Mothra twins in one episode.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's really good.
And what they did, they're so brilliant, they learned their dialogue wrong. So when we loop it, it won't match.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Hey, you started to geek out for a moment. I don't know, Ken, maybe we should do a little business here and then we'll come back.
Yeah, let's do the thing we have to do first, and then we want to come back and actually, because you just teased Stand Against Evil a little bit. We had a couple of questions about that. Plus, we have to get to the apes and all that. And we do want to remind people again, though, if you have a question, if you have a comment, of course, people are chiming in the chat room, and that's fantastic. But if you'd like to phone in your question, kind of like there's the Zoom meeting, there is the one tap from your smartphone, or you can call 669-900-6833, 669-900-6833. Would you like to start us off on the shilling, Mr. Champion?
Yeah, Dana, sit tight. I promise we'll be back because now is the time that we have to remind everybody about the shop, conveniently located for you at missionlogpodcast.com. What you do is you go there on the internet, missionlogpodcast.com, and you click shop. That's how clever we are about labeling the shop. So Carl Huber, our designer extraordinaire, he is just cranking out so many great designs for you. And we take those designs and we put them on products in our shop. Products like what, Ken?
Oh, well, golly, there's the Isolinear John and Ken. That's us on a chip. Well, actually, 2 chips because, we're prima donnas. Carbon chauvinism with a Da Vinci twist is there. And of course, you can also show your love for the silicon side of life with the Silicon Supporter shirt. Your favorite lieutenant and mine, Jay, is featured. Bonk Bonk on the head since 1966. We celebrate the so close to triumph of Nova Squadron. And of course, show your love for Ditalics Mining Corporation as well. And you got the old favorites like Ethos, Pathos, and Logos, Cool as Kirk. Just all kinds of stuff to check out.
Yeah, and we get to add stuff all the time. So we had the triumphant return of here's a look at my robot guts. We had the new Silicon supporter, and pretty much something gets said on a show, and then somebody says, "Hey, you need to make a T-shirt." Ken, the latest one that I saw, somebody said from our latest DS9 episode, "The clock is not a flute."
Yes.
And that needs to be a T-shirt. So maybe that'll make an appearance one day. Who knows?
Well, it could be a T-shirt, but it could also be a sticker. It could be a mug. It could be a tapestry. Mr. Champion, yeah, I know. You're all excited. Yeah. Tons of stuff to check out and make your own. Some truly unique Trekish stuff. You can get yours today just hitting the shop icon at missionlogpodcast.com. Our guest
by
tonight.
The way,
yeah, go ahead.
By the way, Homer says, I'm sporting the tech tonight. And then Carlos says, are there wall hangings of some type available? So yes, there are, Carlos. Thank you for asking. Well,
I think you can hang a tapestry, or you could hang a T-shirt on your wall if you wanted to, or just cover it with stickers, like you're back in high school. Why not?
Right. All right. So as you were saying, folks can call in at 669-900-6833, or they could do like John did and click on that link for Zoom, because we have John ready with a question. How are you tonight, John?
I'm awesome, and just want you to take a look at my.
I'm looking straight at your robot guts. That's awesome.
I remember actually when I was watching that show as a kid, how awesome it would be to actually open your belly to show some circles.
And you've got it. That is fantastic. And I like the theming. I like the theming in the room. You have the communicator on the wall. That is really good.
Yeah, and I've got my Migo Klingon, which is one of my prized.
It's like I'm looking at myself in a mirror. Sure. So thank you for calling us tonight. You have a question or a comment here for Dana or
right.
us.
Yeah. Well, like all of you guys, I'm of your similar age, and certainly grew up watching all the shows that you guys have been mentioning. And I can't believe you mentioned Quark. I totally forgot about that show, and just the wackiness of a garbage truck in space was just amazing.
Well, to be fair, John, I'm only 26. I just read a lot about it. Okay, so
right. So, but I also wanted to go back a little bit further. Do you think you mentioned how Netflix is like kind of killing traditional TV? Do you think because of Netflix and HBO that we're kind of seeing almost the death of anthology now, that almost every show has to have a continuing plot line, that we can't really have kind of a mix that Deep Space Nine, for example, had, where they did have a longer plot, but they also were sort of traditionally anthology? Do you think that's kind of where we're heading?
Well, it depends on your definition of anthology to that regard. But no, the point that I was trying to make was, what Netflix has done has put a wrecking ball through what people's viewing habits have been.
Right.
As I said, my ex-wife was a big TV exec, and before that she was a big agent, and I've been around the business for a long time. And I remember, 10, 15 years ago, the guys that ran the TV department of the big agencies would point to your computer and go, in 10 years, it's all going to be coming out of that. And what they were wrong about was, no, it's still going to come out of your television, but your television is going to have that machine's brain.
Yeah.
And now people view things on demand and in order. My daughter, when she watches a show, it's not like I watched The Night Stalker every Friday night at 10. My daughter will go, I'm going to watch Grey's Anatomy. And she will start at the beginning of Grey's Anatomy. And that will be all she watches until she goes through all 8 seasons. And that's how they do it. I think whatever the show is, if it's a pure anthology like Black Mirror, or something with a continuing plot line, which is very true, is more conducive to binge viewing. I think right now it's the wild, wild west. The people you don't want to be is CBS, ABC, NBC, traditional ad-supported broadcast television.
Yeah.
That's like a 78 record.
Right. I think it's great to be able to binge watch, but I also wonder if there's like the less of a rewatchability factor because you can't just jump back in and watch a specific episode like you can like with some of these classic episodes.
I agree completely, and I love to, and I go through that on Stand Against Evil, where each season has an arc. Things happen, but they're individual shows.
Yeah,
and you can drop in and watch an episode. I try to make it like that. The way I have designed Stand Against Evil is to blatantly, blindly rip off the X-Files in the sense that there's an overarching theme to the season, but the episodes are individual. And we have different styles of episodes. We'll have a heavy mythology show, a ridiculous cartoon version of the show, and I like to think that we can do different things. But I take your point. People do like to binge watch, and that lends itself to a continuing story.
I think, John, there's been a really interesting sort of mix of all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
So you have shows that were on cable, like Mad Men was just one that really stuck out to me as this is an ongoing storyline. And for all 7 seasons of that show, you want to be with it from beginning to end to see the entirety of this character arc. And then I think you have shows where the delivery method has changed the way you watch the show. To your point, take something like Stranger Things.
Right.
Netflix releases the entire season on a day, and maybe you get through it in a few days or a couple of weeks, and then you don't hear about it anymore because everybody watched it and they enjoyed it for that really short period of time. We can say what we will about Star Trek Discovery, but I think it was really smart of CBS to put that on a streaming service, but make us wait week to week and then take a little bit of a break after that, even take a mid-season break and then come back. So it just keeps the shows out there, and it also gives you a little time to digest it before just binging the whole thing. Now, my take on it might change a little bit when we rewatch it, preparing for season 2, because I will binge probably in a few days and see how it affects me then. But there was an anticipation about what was to come next when we were waiting for those episodes to come out new.
And that was a very brave move for CBS because they have the least likely viewership to go to a digital platform. You know, the CBS has the oldest, oldest. Yeah, I mean, I'm nearing it myself. I'm not ragging them at all. But it was a brave move for them to kind of like, no, you're going to come over here. And that's why they used the classic title to do it. They're not dumb.
Well, there is something a lot to be said about that delayed gratification too. I mean, I remember just waiting on my edge for, especially when there was a long break in between episodes, like the winter break or whatever. I mean, you're just like standing on edge waiting for the next episode.
I remember last summer being so excited about Sunday night because I could watch Twin Peaks again. And then,
right.
Well, the joke's on me.
Don, thank you so much, man.
This time, Lucy's going to keep that football there, and I'm going to kick it.
All right. Take it easy, John. Live long and prosper.
All right. You too. Thanks.
I gotta say, I mean, do you think we've actually figured out how it's going to be done, or is everybody finding their own way to do it? Do you know what I mean? Because everybody in the conversation we just had, everybody's like, oh, I like, the holding on and making us wait, and that keeps the show out there a bit longer. By the time we got to the last half of what should have been the second half of the last season of Mad Men, I didn't care anymore. And it still felt like they were just like trying to, hurry it up. And I know the reason they did it was so they could go for another year of Emmys because it had already been shot in that particular instance. And it sort of felt like, personally, I felt duped on that one in a way. I mean, is it we don't seem to have decided how we're going to do it yet. Like Stand Against Evil, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't do like half and then go away for a few months and then come back and do the second half. I mean, you
but we did
finish, right?
We did. Yeah. I mean, IFC is a very strange, has a unique model in that we do 8 episodes a year. We just have 8 episode seasons, and we shoot them in a block. We shoot them like a movie. We do all the kitchen scenes, all the exterior. It's called crossboarding. But they discovered in the first season, IFC is owned by AMC, American Movie Classics, and they showed somebody high up at AMC looked at we would finish 2 episodes and we'd send it in, and then the guy said, I kind of like watching them twice in a row, and so we show 2 episodes a week for the month of October or the month of November, and that's it. That's what we do, and then we come back for the next season. But for ratings this year, we're premiering on Halloween, and I said, sort of in the way that I'm really respectful of people who are in advertising, I said, great. If there's one night in the year people who love horror movies are sitting at home with nothing to do, it's Halloween. This is genius. And they laughed and they said, no, what matters is what we call the +3, which is nobody's watching it when it's on. Everybody watches it within 3 days of it coming on. So we get our overnight ratings, but really 3 days later, that's when you really get a sampling of who's watching it. It's called the overnights and the +3s. These are things that I have to know about that I wish I didn't.
Yeah, well, I almost feel like Stand Against Evil is the 5th business here, or we should tell people what it is. I mean, we know it's a show that you're working on. We know it's a show that you just wrapped season 3.
Yeah,
there's been some mention of the fact that it's horror/comedy/horror. Give people an idea of what it is.
I will describe it very, very briefly. As I said, I grew up in this. I've often described my dad as Archie Bunker without the elegance and sophistication. And I just had this, I always wanted to do a genre show. I wanted to do a horror show, but I can't do it and not make it funny. It's just, I don't have that discipline. And it took me a long time to finally come up with this basic idea of what if my dad was Buffy the Vampire Slayer? What if an old curmudgeonly guy had to fight monsters? And it's not that he didn't believe in them, he just didn't care. He just wanted to go home and watch the baseball game. And so I worked on it and I came up with this idea, and it stars John C. McGinley from Scrubs and Janet Varney from You're the Worst is the sheriff in town. And it's a half-hour sitcom that's hidden inside a horror movie. And they fight demons, and it's funny X-Files. It's funny Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's not a period piece, but it sort of takes place in like a 1970s drive-in horror movie kind of world. It takes place in a little New England town. They have cell phones, but they also have rotary telephones. They drive old 80s cars. It takes place in sort of it sort of feels like an old drive-in horror movie or an old 1970s TV movie like When Michael Calls or Let's Scare Jessica to Death. It has that sort of 70s feel to it. It's very funny. I'm very proud of it.
Very important clarification here. Carlos in the chat says it has John C. McGinley, not to be confused with Ted McGinley, who would signal the end of the show. So
yes,
you are absolutely correct, Carlos. Good clarification.
Good clarification.
Yeah.
That's true. But it's and we have a ton of references this season. We have a Godzilla episode that features the Mothra twins. We have an X-Files salute. We have a Kolchak the Night Stalker salute. We have a lot of it's a show for fans. It's definitely a show for fans.
Let's get to another, if we could get to another one of your passions, because this one to me, it's not one that I studied, but it's like you said earlier about if Wrath of Khan is on, you'll just sit there and watch it. Back in the day, if there was a Planet of the Apes movie on, that was it for me. That was it for me for the day. I remember when Channel 17 in Nashville showed all 5 Planet of the Apes movies, 5 or 6. 5, 6?
5. Yeah.
When they showed all 5 of the Planet of the Apes movies. And that was what I did that weekend. That was all I did that weekend.
A steady and declining budgets.
Well, yeah, that's true. Towards the end, it was telling. And then
now we're shooting at Century City Mall. Look at this exotic location. Yeah.
Well, then WGN out of Chicago showed the which I didn't realize there had been TV movies or something. I was all excited. Like, these are Planet of the Apes movies I've never seen.
Yeah, they did the series. Yeah.
Fall of 1974. Planet of the Apes was a series, and The Night Stalker was a series. Both aired on Friday nights, and both were over before they started.
Is it just my imagination, or did the whole Planet of the Apes television series take place in one subway tube?
Basically, yes, it did. It was again a study in declining budgets. The battle for the Planet of the Apes is actually 30 people fighting over a school bus. It really whittled it down.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so
but
people should go
in a season 3, but beautiful in a season 3 kind of way. You know, they managed to specter of the gun their way through it.
There you go.
As deep as your love is for Star Trek, and if people go back and listen, I want to say all the way back to maybe Funhouse. I know when I saw you perform in clubs around that time, you were doing Star Trek material.
Always. Yeah.
As deep as your love is for Star Trek, though, the open to the Dana Gould Hour, which is your podcast, which is wonderful, and everybody should listen to it. That is homage to Planet of the Apes as well, right?
Yeah, it's actually me doing Charlton Heston's narration of the Planet of the Apes trailer.
Yeah,
it's
nice.
it is literally testosterone personified.
Now
it's heavy, throaty. I hate that I have to cook a steak. Why can't I just bite it out of the cow as it walks past? Yeah, so manly, so manly.
So one of the things that well, I don't know if I should say that you do this. I know that you have an association with Dr. Zayas and the work that he does today.
Yes,
is there ever any chance? And then, I mean, it's if I could just the levels of it's like an onion, but with something really amazingly incredible inside. So Dr. Zayas as Mark Twain tonight.
Yeah.
Hal Holbrook is no longer touring as Mark Twain tonight. Do you think Dr. Zayas would ever take that show on the road?
Kat, are you doing like a Disney thing where you say, well, this person is a friend of Mickey. He's a friend of Pluto, just to keep the illusion alive, keep the magic.
People ask us all the time, who writes for the computer, and boy, does the computer get upset every time that question comes up.
Totally.
What you can see, if you have to go on YouTube for this, it's a long story. I'll give you the 30-second version. Years ago, I was a writer on the Ben Stiller Show, which was on Fox. I think it was 1992. And we had, I wrote a sketch called Planet of the Apes, the musical. And this was before The Simpsons did it and before I worked at The Simpsons. And I thought it would be a great way for me to get somebody to do a really cool Planet of the Apes makeup on me. And it was a commercial for a musical, the way they'll do a commercial for Hamilton when it comes to town, a couple of clips. And then the follow-up joke and the second part of the show was going to be from the producers of Planet of the Apes, the musical. Dr. Zayas is Mark. It was Dr. Zayas is Mark Twain tonight, and it was Dr. Zayas and when I was a boy on the banks of the muddy Mississippi, I had 2 goals: the destruction of the vile pestilence known as man, and to be a steamboat captain. And we got canceled before we got a chance to make it. I remember the TV Guide you'd open the TV Guide, and it used to have in the first page the ratings from the previous week. And one week we were last. It was like literally more people watched everything else on television than us, and it didn't go. And then Planet of the Apes musical, I had nothing to do with it at The Simpsons. It was, I think, David Cohen, who created Futurama, had the same idea and executed it better. And I'm a fan, and I had nothing to do with it. They did a much better job than I would have done. But then John Hodgman, 20 years later, said, somehow Dr. Zaius' Mark Twain came up, and I said, oh, I wrote that as a sketch 20 years ago. And he said, would you do it for my show in San Francisco? And I was about to say no. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I'm K&B Effects, which is one of the biggest effects houses in LA. They do The Walking Dead. They're all my friends. And I went, well, wait a minute, maybe I can. And I literally just called up Greg Nicotero, and I said, hey, can somebody come to San Francisco, and I'll pay them, and they can do Dr. Zaius on me? Yeah, hang on. Hey, Andy, you want to go to San Francisco with Dana? Yeah, no problem. and so I did it, and it's on YouTube. So just if you Google Dana Gould Doctors, or go to YouTube Dana Gould Dr. Zaius, you can see it. But then I did the following year, then it became a thing. And then I did Dana Gould is Dr. Zaius as William Shatner performing the night before Christmas. And so, and you can see this too. And it's basically Dr. Zaius comes out in the Rocket Man tuxedo going, it was the night before Christmas and all through the house. And then excuse me, he sees you when you're sleeping. This is terrifying to a child. And then I come out of Dr. Zaius and do me, and then I go back into Zaius and back into Shatner. And it's like a Russian egg. It's like a Russian doll of a bit.
Wow.
I don't know how we started down this road or how we got to where we are, but
well,
that
it's amazing.
Is my expensive hobby.
It's absolutely amazing. And like, I think I can't remember where I was. I think it was probably just maybe when we were going to see Wrath of Khan, that they ran a preview for showing that they were doing a Planet of the Apes, and there was this guy doing Dr. Zaius, and I don't think anybody in the audience, except for maybe me and John, knew. But I was like,
yeah,
awesome. So that's it's basically just wanting everybody to be able to see it
with Ben Mankiewicz, and then I did it at the 50th anniversary screen, and now it's like a weird side career I have. It's like I want to do like a jazz album, like just like Zaius with a Z, just like I cover the waterfront.
Nice. To bring it all the way back around, get Ben Folds to produce it, and it can be like been, from 2,000 years from now or something like that.
Yeah. Hey, when I do him like an old, like you guys will get that, like an old, like a guest on Merv Griffin, like when Orson Welles would go on Merv Griffin and just drop names. He's like an old celebrity name dropper. Like, I live up in Santa Barbara next to Susie Flechette. She's a delight. Don't ever buy a house from Alan Alda. That's my only advice to anybody.
All right, Ken, we got to do a thing, and then we got to do another thing.
We have a thing really quickly, so I feel bad because we said earlier, well, Dana said earlier, if I had known you were going to ask me. So we have a thing that we do, Dana, and as I say every week, having grown up in the West, I feel certain you know about the idea of the lightning round, although I also feel certain that we do. Okay, excellent, because we got one coming up for you in just a moment. But first, before we do that, I want to remind you about something that we would love for you to do after this show. Priority One, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, also goes live every Tuesday night, and they do it right after our show. What are the odds? Each Tuesday at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, Elijah, Kenna, and Anthony bring you news from all over the Star Trek multiverse, TV and movie news, gaming news, literary reviews, plus a whole lot more. They kick off a few minutes after our show. Actually, lately, they've been kicking off right after our show. So don't do anything except for change the page you're checking out. Go to facebook.com/PriorityOnePodcast. That is facebook.com/PriorityOnePodcast. And if you can't catch it tonight, do catch the show when it comes out on Friday. You can find that wherever you get podcasts, or make it simple for yourself, podcast.roddenberry.com. lightninground.com. So the lightning round, Dana, I love the fact that you're like, yeah, I know exactly what a lightning round is. Let's just get straight to it.
Favorites? Yeah, by the way, Jeff just said, has John not mentioned the lightning round to the guest again? Jeff, I'm so sorry, and Dana, so sorry. But yes, Ken.
I've never said anything briefly in my life.
Well, we'll see what we can do. Well, actually, we'll put a time against you and Larry, who was on a couple of weeks ago. We'll see how it goes. Favorite Star Trek antagonist?
Antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know the character's name, but I think it's Koloff. The deliverer of this line. I didn't mean to say the Enterprise should be hauling away garbage.
Okay.
I meant to say the Enterprise should be hauled away as garbage. I believe it was Commander Koloff.
Yes, Trouble with Tribbles right there.
That's right.
Nice.
Well done. Well done.
Have you seen the animated series?
Yes.
Nice.
That's the correct answer. Good. Favorite Star Trek movie?
Oh, Rathacon.
Okay, good answer as well. Favorite
I meant
episode?
Final Frontier. No, I'm kidding.
Favorite episode? Any series, any era? Favorite episode?
Trouble with Tribbles, probably my favorite, just because it was so fun. But my City on the Edge of Forever, my opinion, of the finest.
Very good. Interesting.
And because of Mission Log, a greater appreciation of the I just blanked on the name with Clint Howard.
Corbomite Maneuver.
Yeah, Corbomite.
Yeah, gold standard Star Trek right there.
I had much greater appreciation for it once you guys pointed out what it really encapsulated.
Wow. Thanks.
Thank you.
Favorite bad episode?
The Empath.
Ooh, wow.
Wow. Okay. You sign up
because you could see again the only thing the Empath is lacking is the school bus from Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
Engineering, science, or ops?
Oh, engineering. I was a Scotty. I wanted to be Scotty when I was a kid.
Okay. Favorite warp speed?
I'm gonna switch genres to Spaceballs and say too frickin' fast. Good.
At ludicrous speed. Nice.
Ludicrous speed. That's what it was. Ludicrous speed.
Favorite Enterprise. You should. Favorite Enterprise crew member.
Well, Scotty, and coming up close behind him, Kevin Riley.
Really? Interesting.
Wow.
And
because he looks like every brother I have.
And the last question, because it is tradition, have you ever been to Vulcan, Alberta, Canada?
Yes.
Have you really?
No, I've been to nearby it. I've been to Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada.
Okay. Well, that's fine.
I don't think Lethbridge has a giant statue of the Enterprise or anything like that. Yeah.
No, I don't. But I do. Well, I've talked to you.
No, it's fine. The only thing that's a drag is that we're coming close to the end, but there are a couple of things that I want to say really quickly. First of all, your podcast is one of my favorite things, especially for the part in the middle.
It's the only part I like.
What do you call those again?
The middle part.
The middle part. Okay. Well, I know that your latest episode actually has a whole bunch of those middle parts strung together, making one giant part, although it's sort of like then which part is the middle? That'll be left.
There's no middle part. That's the July episode is always the one I don't get to do because I'm in Atlanta all of June shooting Stand Against Evil. And this is my box of future middle parts. This is just chock full of articles and things that I'm going to turn into middle parts. Middle parts coming up. Paul McCartney's post-Beatles nervous breakdown. The origin of the Outer Limits. I have all sorts of stuff coming your way.
Very cool. And then, of course, there's also just tremendous conversations, honestly, with a bunch of comedians and such as well.
Thank you.
I love your podcast, and I really appreciate you being on ours as well.
My pleasure.
And I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah,
I'd love to
check it out.
Can I plug two things real quick?
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
do.
I hope to see you guys at Comic-Con too. I will be at Comic-Con Stand Against Evil as a panel Saturday at 1. And one thing I didn't get to mention, but is coming out, I believe, in August, is I adapted Rod Serling's first draft of Planet of the Apes as a graphic novel for Boom, which is coming out, called Planet of the Apes Visionaries. And it's the version of the film that's much like the book, where it takes place in a modern city. And there's a different main character. It's very different. And that comes out in August.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dana, thank you again so much. We could do this every week, I'm sure, for hours and hours. So we really appreciate your time joining us here tonight. Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry, technical production on Mission Log Live by Infinity Networks, producer Brandon Bradley. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from the Roddenberry Podcast Network, including not just Mission Log, but also Women at Warp, Priority One, and the Trek Files. Thanks to everyone who joined us live or later, and we will talk to you again next week.